Hi, everyone, and welcome to the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast, where entrepreneurs help entrepreneurs grow faster, better, and stronger in the green industry. From leadership to sales to recruiting and operational excellence, we cover the topics holding entrepreneurs back and share how to get past those bottlenecks with the best in the industry. I'm your host, Rob Murray, co founder and CEO of Intrigue, a digital marketing company focused on helping landscape companies grow. So sit back and enjoy the show. All right, welcome back to another episode of the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast. Today, I have an awesome guest, Michael Pletz. Thank you for doing this, my man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rob. I appreciate it.
Um, cool to have a fellow podcaster on this podcast. So, Michael Pletz has been running How to Hardscape for almost 5 years now, I think, right?
Yeah, coming up
Uh,
on 5 this October.
so, a seasoned veteran compared to what we're at. We're not even a year into doing this. So, really appreciate you coming on the show. Michael's also founder and owner of Ever After Landscaping. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that Michael does. So I'm not sure how he sleeps at night, but we'll get into all those things as we go through the conversation. But before we do, Michael, can you give a Cole's Notes summary of kind of the last couple of years and how you ended up, running your business and running the podcast and more?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I started back in 2007 in this industry, and I was introduced by my manager at a grocery store, and she said that I should work at a stone yard. So I started working at a stone yard, worked for there for more than 7 years, and eventually started doing side work. So that's where I actually got to doing hands-on stuff. Uh, Side work got too busy. I was making more on weekends than I was at a full-time job at the stone yard. So it just made sense to start my own business. Started my own business. That's going about 5, 6 years, probably 6 years now. And then started How to Hardscape because I kind of saw a need for more and more information online in our space. And that started with a website because I guess I'm a writer first, and started the website, then started the Instagram with the podcast because a podcast is a great way for guys to be able to listen in their trucks on the way to the job site, and then YouTube channel started. So we're kind of knocking down dominoes as we go.
Very cool. And what's the core focus of the landscape business of Ever After Landscaping? Just so
So
people
we
know
do,
what you specialize
yeah,
in.
we specifically do hardscaping. Even though it does say landscaping in the name, that was perhaps a bit too ambitious on my end, wanting to learn more about the softscape side of things, the planting and everything, but I never got around to that with everything I'm doing. So we specifically do hardscaping.
Very cool. All right, sweet. So, theme of the show is all around understanding the primary growth constraint holding entrepreneurs back in the green industry. So, you've been in this space a long time, and so what do you see as the main thing that's kind of holding people back from taking their business to what they want to be as the next level?
Yeah, I think like the easiest thing would be hiring. Like me myself, I also struggle with that, and being able to hand that off to somebody else, like your prized possession, like your baby. And I'm the one building these things. So being able to like hand that off to somebody and have them step into your role, and for you to give them agency in your business and to take control of whatever vision you might have in your business. I think that's like the most difficult thing to do. Um, and but beyond that, I think is also what I try to address in this industry, and that's being able to charge what you're worth, but not just what you're worth, but what you want to be worth, what you should be worth tomorrow to be able to grow your business, so that you don't have if somebody makes a mistake in your business and it's going to cost you a day, that day is not going to be a big chunk out of your livelihood, where you may need to your truck goes down tomorrow and you need to buy a new truck. Hopefully that money's in your business there, as opposed to you having to reinvest into the business with your own money, and slowly that starts to eat away at your business as you have more equipment, as you have more employees. um that's the biggest thing that I'm about, is making sure that you're charging what you're worth and incorporating those overhead expenses that eat away at a company before they actually do for contractors.
Well, and it's neat too, the way you kind of parlayed the first one about hiring and essentially letting go and giving people agency within your organization. And if you're not charging enough, then it's difficult to pay enough to have somebody that comes in that you trust enough to let go.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's kind of seems like, that letting go piece becomes easier if you're earning enough to be able to hire great people. So then how do you figure this out? I know there's lots of spreadsheets in the world and programs and stuff like that that help people figure out estimates and pricing. So like how do you tackle that if you're somebody trying to figure this out right now?
Yeah, I think it's as simple as like I like a specific pricing methodology that is straightforward. It's labor rate recovery. How many hours do you have in a season? And how many hours is your project going to take you? It's going to give you a percentage. So for example, if you have 1,000 hours to in your season, in your year, and your project's going to take you 100 hours, that's 10% of your season. So you need to take 10% of your overhead expenses and apply it to that project. And it's quite easy to sit down and be able to list out all your overhead expenses, everything that comes out of your business. It's there's no such thing as that's just the cost of doing business. Everything needs to be added into those business expenses, and then whatever your equipment is and that depreciation on equipment, and being able to figure that out to get to a nice round number for what your overhead is. And I consider overhead being business expenses plus equipment. And then you just add that 10% of that project, so those expenses into that project, plus your labor, plus whatever you pay your employees, and then plus your materials, and then add a healthy profit margin on top of that. It's quite easy to be able to know that you're charging what you're worth with that formula there.
Okay, cool. So there's, I mean, almost everybody probably at least does, labor cost and materials cost. And then you said something really neat about a simple way to look at how your overhead contribution per project works. And it almost seems like you almost have it per hour.
Yeah,
Like if you look at
exactly.
your how many available hours do you have in the season, you take your
Yep.
overhead divided by your total available hours, and
Yep.
then that number is multiplied by the number of hours on any given project.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever that percentage is the percentage that you need to apply from your budgeted overhead for that season into it. So if it's
Yeah,
10,
that's cool.
if your project's 10% of your season, you need 10% of your overhead expenses into that project.
I love it, and it's simple,
It's simple.
which means it can be done without too much work, but a little bit of discipline. So then you mentioned the idea of healthy profit margin. So you figure out what your cost is. You've got your contribution to your overhead sorted. You got your material. You got your staff, and then a healthy profit on top. Tell me more about that.
A healthy profit on top is basically set by what I believe to be your market. So you can get carried away with your overhead expenses and you can add whatever you want into your overhead expenses. I like to say I like to charge like I'm the company that I want to be tomorrow. And basically what that is even though I don't have specific types of equipment in my business, I may want them in a year, 2 years, 3 years. So I add those into my budget to be able to start to accumulate that capital so that when I go to put a down payment on that equipment, that money's there. I've already been charging like I'm that company. And then it's not a reinvestment into the company on my part, or it's not coming out of the profit in the business. So you can get carried away with that though. So then it becomes okay, how much net profit do I add? How much net profit margin do I add to this project to ensure that I'm staying within that market-based pricing for my market? And that just comes down to watching your close ratio or your close rate. Like, are you falling in a bad close rate and you are probably priced too high? Or it could be something in your sales process that you're not demonstrating that you are that type of company that can charge that amount. Because even within a market, there's market-based pricing for other companies. And what perceived value can you add as a landscaping business? And that's what I've been focusing on in my business in the last few years or so to make sure that um, we can charge a little bit more than what the typical market rate is in our business.
Yeah, okay, that's great. So then, um, so there's two pieces that come out of that. One around close rate as a an indicator of pricing, um, and what does that look like then? Like, what's a healthy close rate from your perspective?
I like to be above about a 60%. And if I'm below that, that's probably pretty bad, but it's going to differ from company to company. And everybody wants like blanket, this is where you should be at, but ultimately it depends on the company because I qualify very much when it comes to somebody reaching out to me. I make sure if they reach out to me for a backyard patio, I make sure that they send me a photo of their space and tell me what you want done in your space and ideas that you may have. And if somebody doesn't respond to that, well, we never go out for a consultation. So they never even fall into our close rate. And then we ask them for their budget. If they're not willing to give us a budget on the email, we will tell them, okay, based on what you're telling us here and the projects that we've done in the past, you typically will fall between this amount and this amount. And then they'll either say that's too much, or they'll say, okay, let's schedule a consultation. So they do have to jump through quite a few hoops to be able to even get us on site for that initial consultation. So our close ratio, I hope for it to be around 70% with all those hoops that they had to fall in. And that's based on the proposals sent out to proposal declined or approved from that.
Do you charge for your proposals?
I do not. And I know that's a lot of people do prefer to charge for proposals, but I just feel it's another qualifying method to see if that client was even willing to give up a little bit of money to get there. I just don't find it to be worth it for me with the hoops that I already have them to go through in
Yeah,
the
well, I mean,
initial.
you're at 60-70% close rate. I mean, that's pretty solid. You're not wasting your time on too many people if you're visiting
Yes.
them and then closing them at that clip. So it's interesting too, right? Because if you're wickedly overpriced and your close rate is 10%, you could still be really happy with it, to your point,
Yes.
because there isn't just a one size fits all close rate. But I can say with pretty certain confidence that if you're closing 90% higher, you're probably underpriced.
Right. Exactly. 100%.
And so I guess the kicker is being intentional, right? Like, how many projects do you want at what type of price point? And if you get that, then you're in a good space for you. Um, One of the things, though, you mentioned too in close rate, and I'm not sure if this is the case, for Michael, but have you done any sales training before?
I have not. Luckily, I've got a podcast that I can have salespeople on, and I treat that as my sales training, I guess.
Sure. Well, it's
But
like straight up consulting, right?
yeah, exactly. I take advantage of that. So I would say that that's kind of my sales training that I go through on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, well, I mean, even the idea of asking for budget, some people are pretty like sometimes they're scared to ask for it. Or if someone says, I'm not sure what it is, I'm hoping you tell me. And then they go, okay, well, tell me what you want. And then they build this dream list that ends up being 4 times more than the person has. So it can't go
Yeah.
anywhere. So it's just a very shitty situation. Um, so that's what kind of asks, like not many people specifically put budget as a qualifier in their sales process. And the fact that you have a sales process in itself usually says at some level you've been exposed to training. But I do find it interesting that every single landscape company I've ever worked with has operational training, whether it's in-house, whether it's post-secondary, if it's certified colleges and schools, if it's association training, it could even be supplier training, where they come in and demo how to install stuff, whatever it is. Every single business does that, and like
Yeah.
1 in 50 trains their salespeople in a professional sales environment. The last time I checked, there's no work to do if the sale doesn't happen. I find it
Right.
fascinating that people aren't doing sales training. Can you help me understand what's up with that?
There might be just like yeah, disassociation with that, where I think that just the business owner thinks like, okay, I can do this, somebody else can do this. And even if they're not, a lot of business owners that I know, they don't see themselves as salespeople, so they just know the industry, right? And they know what they love, and they can go out and talk passionately about it and sell. And they don't see themselves as a salesperson because of that, and they think that, you know what, they can hire somebody to step in the same role and they can do the same sort of thing without that sales training. But when it comes to somebody else stepping in your own shoes, and without that perspective and perhaps without that industry knowledge, it may just be a blind spot that they don't even know that they need to actually train these people up and give them that sort of training to step into the owner's shoes in that sales role. I think, my
Yeah,
opinion, I guess.
it's fascinating. I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So for anybody listening right now, I think Sandler sales training is probably the best. I mean, I've been exposed to many, but I think that one's the best if you're taking notes and want to check one out, Sandler. Um, so this idea of charging what you're worth, you're getting your margins where you need, your close rates in a good spot, you're starting to make some money, you're pricing the way you want to be, the company you want to be tomorrow. I think it's a really cool mindset. So now I'm doing that. I've got some, buffer. I'm making some money. I can hire some people. From your experience as well as an interviewer, talking to all these other entrepreneurs, What do you see as the main issue holding people back from letting go and giving people agency in their organization?
Yeah, I'd come back to like it's our baby, and it's tough to let go of certain things that is your baby. And um if you are and knowing yourself, like having some sort of self-awareness. I know right now that personally I love building things. Like that's what gives me joy. And I
Right.
want to be in the field 100% of the time. So if I go out and I hire somebody, who am I looking for to take some of the responsibility from my business out of my hands? Well, in that case, it's probably a salesperson. But do I want to have a salesperson stepping in my shoes and being the face of my business? Well, probably not, and probably not in 5 years, when I probably get more and more backaches and I don't want to be in the field anymore. So I also have to have that kind of self awareness of where my business is going, where I personally am going, and in having that long-term aspect of I want to be in this industry for the long term. For me to be in this industry for a long term, I need to hire somebody that's going to be in the field and going to be that experienced and skillful person. And for that to happen, I need to give up that agency in my business and be able to give them a part of my vision that I see for that project and allow them to make mistakes. And coming back to the number side of things, I need to have that buffer for them to make mistakes as well, that it's not going to put pressure on me and I'm not going to take it out on them when they make a mistake. And that comes down to money. And having that buffer of money is just going to allow somebody stepping into my shoes to make those mistakes. And I'm not going to get angry at them because you know what? I've got that buffer in my
Yeah,
pocket.
and so with all the people you've met over the years, um, what like from your perspective, do you see any common um reasons why people just won't let that happen? Like I see I see there's obviously there's many different types of entrepreneurs, but if we were to simplify categories, one is if I want to do it right, I got to do it myself, and
Yes.
another one is I'm going to trust people to go mess shit up, and together we'll all grow. Just to oversimplify two categories. And I find there's more on the former than there are on the latter. And I'm just curious because you have a unique perspective on the industry, talking to so many people over the years. Do you see a common trait or reason why people aren't willing to let go?
Yeah, I think some people come into this industry and they're hardscapers, and some people come into this industry and they're business owners first. And at some point, that hardscaper needs to become that business owner. And that might happen, that might not. It might be a pride thing in their work, and they want to be that hands-on person and they can't give anything up. But there's just very obvious people that I've interviewed where they're a business owner. Like they have a business owner mindset. They know what they need to do and where they're going in their business. They've got that long-term vision. And then there's other people that I interview, and it's very obvious that they are a hardscaper. They love to be in the field. And it comes down to like when I'm interviewing somebody, it comes down to like, what are they passionately talking about? If I
Right.
start talking about sales with them, they're typically, if they're a hardscaper, they're typically like, yeah, you know what, sales, I don't see myself as a salesperson. I just do beautiful work and I get people signing up and it's great. And if they're a business
Well, they're
owner,
like
they
artists.
love, yeah, exactly. They're artists. And if they're a business owner, they love to dive into that sales process and they love to talk about this leads to that and their close ratio and et cetera, et cetera. So I just think it comes down to that mindset of, are you a hardscaper first or are you a business owner first? And if you are a hardscaper and you want to be a business owner, are you able to eventually just give up some of that sort of um agency in your business?
Yeah, that's cool. And so then I like the idea too. Like, are you a hardscaper first or a business owner first? Are there any resources that you've ever come across that help like someone to figure that out?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the person personally, because I would say books, but I'm an audiobook person. I'm a podcast person. I listen to Audible and podcasts pretty much for the most part of the day. So like listening to those, I know
Is there any one
Michael,
that comes to mind?
yeah, like Michael E. Gerber, the E Myth.
There it
If you
is.
want, that's like an obvious one,
It's
right?
great.
Yeah, it is. And but it's also okay. I do want to say it's also okay to be a hardscaper too.
No, I'm just saying if
And
you're a hardscaper and you want to have that
yes,
business owner mindset, like if you want to try to make it happen, I was curious if you had a resource you'd recommend, and eMyth
yeah,
popped up.
And I just want to say, like, it's definitely okay to be a hardscape. Just be like self-aware of what you're doing in your business. That if you do want to have that business mindset and you do want to scale your business, but you have a hardscaper mindset, just be aware of that. And it's totally okay to be a hardscaper in a bit and have a business. Just know what that leads to 10 years down the road, because it is a physical industry, it is a hard industry. And do you have some sort of exit plan with that, or what are you going to grow your business to? Because you do need that exit plan if you're in such a physical industry,
Yeah, that's cool.
whether that's growing a business and becoming that business owner, or whether that's, you know what, I just want to build cool stuff for the next 10 years and then get out and service the industry in some other way.
Which is super cool. I think that,
Yeah.
self-awareness is a really key piece, right? Like if I understand myself, my strengths, my blind spots, it's gonna be a lot easier to figure out how I want to design my life moving forward. And I think your point too with Gerber and E-Myth revisited, um, regardless of whether you are a business owner mindset or a hardscaper, as a business owner, you are a business owner and a manager and a doer. So knowing that and the different roles and how they, relate to each other can be super helpful. So I think that was a good recommendation for a resource. So then if we come back to, this whole idea of charging what we're worth, and we talked a bit about, the costing and the pricing strategies. Um, we haven't really talked too much about this other, endeavor that you're a part of, where you've essentially built a tool to help people do that. So can you just help us understand like what brought that to life and what is it?
Yeah, so when I started the How to Hardscape back in 2019, by 2020, it was very obvious to me that contractors struggle with that knowing your numbers kind of portion side of the business and knowing what to charge and charging what they're worth. I was at a small conference and there was a contractor doing a presentation at the front, and they showed them a spreadsheet of how they quote a project, and 90% of these contractors whipped out their phones and started taking pictures of it. So I was like, oh man, nobody seems to know exactly what to charge if they're taking pictures of other people's numbers that they don't know how they came about that, right?
Right.
Um, so then I had already created something in my business, which was like a spreadsheet that did exactly what I talked about there with that labor rate recovery of their overhead and being able to quote from that spreadsheet. And we had hundreds of people inside the industry and outside the industry buy that spreadsheet. And I wanted to continue to update that spreadsheet and add more features to it. But it just gets to a point with the spreadsheet where it's inefficient. Time tracking would have been like the next thing we added to it, but you can't do that really efficiently with a spreadsheet. So software was the next step up from that. So we discontinued the spreadsheet. We started the software. Software is the headquarters, How to Hardscape headquarters software. And it does the same thing. It allows you to budget, estimate, job cost, time track, schedule, um, employee management. So we also created training resources. That's interlocking concrete pavement installation, segmental retaining wall installation, fire features, like a bunch of installation courses. And the whole purpose of that is not necessarily for somebody just getting into the industry, but it's for onboarding your employees. Because with my exit interviews with my employees, like consistently, I would get, Mike, it was great to work with you. Like it's not necessarily the industry for me, but would have been really great that I don't know this industry at all coming into it. It would have been great to have some sort of training before I hopped on a job site, just to like know what a screed bar is and
Just an
what.
orientation at some level.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't do that, and I know tons of people that don't do that. It's just, hey, if you have a warm body that actually shows up to that first day, it's a win, right? But what if you can, before that first day, say, "Hey, I'm gonna pay you, do these courses. This is your onboarding course." So we created those training resources for that, and those are in the software. You can assign them to your employees and set that onboarding course up for them before they even start on their first day. And that's the whole goal with the software, is to create more so like a central area for your business to be able to quote, estimate, job costs, do all that stuff, and employee management and so on.
Yeah. So like essentially, figure out what to charge, get the bid, and then do the work.
Exactly.
That's huge. So then, how does someone check it out?
You can just go to members.howtohardscape.com. That's the webpage there right now. That's, you can see our courses there. You can see a little bit about the software. Eventually we'll have like a good landing page for it. But honestly, anywhere you can find us, How to Hardscape. I am a hardscaper on YouTube, and you can just reach out to me and start that conversation there. Right now, we're growing with the features. We've got all hands on deck on development, not so much on other aspects. So I'm the salesperson in that as well. I'm the support person in that. So you have direct access to me. So anywhere you can find us, how to hardscape, shoot me a message.
Very cool. And what like just give people that are listening, what's the average price point for this thing on a monthly basis or whatever? How does it work?
So right now it's 199 a month, and what we're doing is as we add more features, that price point increases for new users. So basically, if you sign up, you're locked in at that price point. Eventually, with the features that we're going to continue to add, we'll get closer to that $500 a month mark. So it's kind of an incentive to jump on early for those early users and get in there. And so we have people signed up at $100 a month, which are locked in there, and that's kind of the goal. It's a featured tier pricing structure there.
Yeah, that's cool. Super cool. And then so what do you see in this year, right? The day of recording, we're looking at April 4th, 2024. Knowing your numbers is never going to go away. So people having to figure that out is definitely a core part. I mean, last time I checked, money is the language of business, and if we don't know our numbers, which is all money and percentages of our costs and the money that we make, then we're in a pretty tough spot in terms of trying to design a company that's going to support our lives the way we want. Which then gives us the opportunity, if we figure it out, to get right people in and all this good stuff. Like those themes are pretty timeless. But in like today's environment, like what are you seeing as somebody interviewing all these folks, as well as being in the field yourself, and with the software, you're talking to the industry. You have a pretty cool perspective. What do you see going on right now, from your point of view?
In terms of where we're at, I think that things are just reverting back to before 2020 in terms of demand. So now people are, you know what, I need to focus on my marketing. And I was hitting that drum throughout the pandemic because people stopped marketing and said, hey, I don't need a market. Like, I don't need
Yeah,
a website. I don't need to update my website. I don't need to focus on social media. And they weren't looking ahead to, okay, when do things return back to normal and I actually have to go out and get more and more leads into my business. But and as you know, a website is better to start earlier as opposed to when you actually need it.
yeah. What do they say? The
um
best day to plant a tree is 25 years ago. Second best day is today.
yes, exactly. And I tried to hit that drum because I also love the website building process and SEO and all that. So um I think that you're seeing a lot of people, and I unfortunately get a lot of people. No, not unfortunately. I get a lot of people reaching out to me. Unfortunately, they're reaching out to me because they need work. And because like through our Instagram, through our podcast, we have enough reach where we're getting a good variety of people from the well-established companies that have already focused on their marketing. But if you're more so reaching out to me, it's usually because you're either installation side of things, you got a question or you want to learn more, or it's because of the marketing aspect that you need to now start to build a website. You need to now focus more on social media, and all these things would have been best started when you
Didn't need
had
it.
the work, yeah, when you didn't need it, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to do that because you're all hands on deck at that point with the clients that you're already servicing, but you need to carve out that time for that marketing, because it's an ongoing thing.
So essentially, what you're saying then is like demand is softening, and we need to be more strategic in how we're going to market.
Yeah, exactly. I like, for to give you myself as an example, these past few years, I doubled down on the SEO for my landscaping website because I had focused so much on how to hardscape in the SEO for that, and I dropped the ball on my Ever After website. So I doubled down on that, and I also doubled down on creating a YouTube channel, and that's huge because everything that I do online has to support what I do offline. With my How to Hardscape, it needs to support Ever After landscaping. So with my YouTube channel, it's installation based videos, and I use that to attract leads to come into my business. So we're at a point where we're actually getting leads into our business from the YouTube channel, and
Nice.
they see the person talking about installation as an authority in that, and they specifically want me to quote their project, and only me because of that. And they see my face and they get to know me and all that. But also, I use those videos in my proposals. So when I send them a scope of work of how we're going to build their patio, it's got hyperlinks into each of those because I've
Oh,
got
I
step
love
by
it,
step how to do
Mike.
it.
That's
Yeah.
sweet.
And so it's there for them, and they get to see exactly what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it, and they see my face in it.
Very, very cool. I don't think anybody's ever said that they use their installation videos in their proposals. That's really cool idea. Not that anybody's listening is going to take the idea, because they'd actually have to be the discipline to execute on said idea. But that's really, really cool, man. I think a lot of people too forget that. I've heard people say, "Well, YouTube, it'd be like people watching me in Arkansas. What do I care about that?" Which is true, and there's some point to that. But at the same time, you're still getting hired locally by people that are around here that find you. So can you speak a little bit to that whole like international perspective in using YouTube, but it actually does turn in revenue locally for you?
Yeah. So for me with YouTube, I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but you choose your category, and I chose education. And then after you choose education, it asks you where you are. So you choose Canada. And I don't know if that pushes you out to more so of a Canadian audience. And especially they know your IP address, they know your local. Where do they start with? Do they start local and expand you elsewhere if you start to nail it with your local clicks onto your video and the watch time with that? Might have something to do with it. I don't know. But ultimately, the way I saw YouTube was a way to support my online business and my offline business. And with that, I knew that there would be some small segment of local traffic coming into that, whatever that may have been. But ultimately, it was to serve both sides of my business. And ultimately, I knew eventually that ads would be running on it. So I'd be being paid to actually market myself, which is also a benefit, more
Yeah, reverse
revenue and all
cost
that.
marketing.
Yes, exactly. Um, and I mean, I would say like Instagram's probably a better way to be able to target your local market, because you can specifically search your city and see people posting with your city, and you can go into those accounts and obviously the right ones, like are they an adult, and are they
Yeah,
posting in your area, and can you go in and like a few of their photos so that they see, oh, ever after landscaping, that's interesting, I was looking for landscaping. And so like Instagram I think is really good for that local market if you're not looking to pay for marketing and you're just looking to invest your time into it. But YouTube I think is like is the best. I love YouTube.
yeah, that's cool. And like in the last 12 months, can you draw dollars in revenue from YouTube into
I
your
could,
offline
and
business?
I haven't.
I know,
I
but
know
if you
how
were
much
to
I've
think,
made from YouTube. Yeah.
but if you were to think off the cuff, like based on people saying, "Hey, I saw your YouTube channel and they hired you," is it like a couple $1,000, tens of thousands
Oh
of
no.
dollars?
Yeah, it's like it's probably below 250,000. It's probably above about 175,000.
Yeah, like that's not nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not talking about chump change.
Yeah, exactly.
So YouTube definitely worthwhile checking out, and getting over the fear of being on camera because you want to share your expertise, right? Um,
100%.
so you mentioned eMyth. One last thing, and you mentioned Audible and podcasts. What's one resource you'd want to share with people if they want to, you know, learn about business, leadership themselves, the craft, whatever? What's something that you'd recommend to the audience outside of How to Hardscape as a podcast? Because we have to obviously know that that's a great podcast people should check out. But what's something else?
Okay. I guess I can't use how to hardscape
You can
it.
if
No,
you want to.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. There's a lot of great industry podcasts, like this podcast, yourself. Um, just selfishly, I do have another podcast with two other landscapers. We sit down once a week for 2 hours and we release a podcast that's more like unfiltered. Um, like this is the crap that we go through in this industry.
What's it
Um,
called?
it's called Not Our Finest Hour, and it's also three of us are Ontario based. So if you're looking for like a very real, unfiltered, this is the crap that we go through in this industry, from clients to everything that we go through on site. I got to put that small little plug in there. But there's also great industry podcasts as well. Like I said, this one. And then like I'm an audiobook person as well, and I'm just kind of flipping through my audiobooks. When it comes to numbers, Simple Numbers by Greg Crabtree
Oh
is
yeah,
incredible.
that's a gooder.
Yeah, and he's also got Simple Numbers 2.0. We've had Greg Crabtree on the podcast like 3 times. He's incredible. Let's see here. I could kind of scroll through and give you some other ones, but when it comes to, since this we've talked a bit about knowing your numbers, that's a good one. Like Alex Hormozy, I'm sure you've heard of him, but his YouTube channel is incredible. And he's got $100 million leads and $100 million offers.
Yeah,
Those
so
are
good.
great books to get into as well. Yeah, I would stop there because
That's
I
a
could
lot.
just,
You could keep
yeah, I
going.
guess so. Yeah.
Awesome. And if someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of Michael Pletz?
How to Hardscape, wherever you can find me. If you are an email person, just go to the website and you'll find the email, contact us. Instagram, wherever you can find us. How to Hardscape. It's I'm a Hardscaper is my personal brand. So that's where you'll find our YouTube and all that. So anything like personal based, I am a Hardscaper. Anything community based, podcast, articles, things like that, How to Hardscape.
Very, very cool, man. Well, I appreciate you doing this. Thanks so much for coming on.
Rob, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. And thanks for listening, everybody. See ya. The I Am Landscape Growth podcast is brought to you by Intrigue, where passionate marketing meets predictable results for entrepreneurs. Remember to like and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next episode. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please visit intriguemedia.com and click on podcasts.